This, even though the title of the Sikh is Parshas Emor, but we're primarily, this part of the Sikh we're going to be learning is about the month of Iyar that we're in right now, and the unique idea of this month. Plus, I also added, since it's a very short Sikh, I also added a letter of the Rebbe about something connected with the Parsha, a very interesting point. So first the Sikh. Iyar, the advantage, Iyar, the Rebbe, whenever he speaks about a certain period of time that we are in the Jewish calendar, that time is always the best time. You're in the middle of Pesach, that's amazing. You're in the middle of Tishrei, at Cheshvan, whatever you're in at that time, that's the greatest time. We're in the month of Iyar, there's nothing like it. What's there nothing like it? Every day in the month of Iyar has a unique mitzvah, the mitzvah of Sefiras Ha'Omer. No other month of the year has a special mitzvah connected. Of course, we put on tefillin almost every day of the week. Of course, every month we have 4 times Shabbos, but it's not something that's a specific, unique mitzvah that only occurs sometime. Iyar is the only month that the entire month, every single day, we do a unique mitzvah that is not done for the majority of the rest of the year. The month of Nisan, over there it's only the second half of the month that we start counting Sefiras Ha'Omer. We start counting from the night of the 15th going to the 16th. When we go into next month, Sivan, it's only until Shavuos, until the 6th of Sivan. Mitzvah every single day. There are certain advantages and certain months that have something unique about them. The majority of the month of Tishrei, no tachton. The entire month of Nisan, also we don't recite the supplication prayers tachton. What does it mean? This month for you is the head of months. You could say it's the first of all the months, that the month of Nisan is the first one. Comes the Shalach HaKadosh and says that by calling the entire month of Nisan Rosh Chodashim, it's as if we're saying Shekol Yemei Chodesh Nisan Mechinas Rosh Chodesh. Every single day of the month of Nisan is like Rosh Chodesh. So we know that there's 12 months of the year, or like this year, there was 13 months of the year. Every month has the most special time of the month, the beginning of the month, Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month. But Nisan, the Shalach says, every single day of the month is like Rosh Chodesh. So we find other months that have seemingly a significance that we would say is greater than the month of Iyar. Yet, when we come to Tishrei and Nisan, it's not something that I do that contributes to making Tishrei special or contributes to making Nisan special. It's just Hashem said, the month of Nisan is going to be for you Rosh Chodashim. Whether or not I even know it's Nisan, every single day of the month of Nisan is special. The same thing, Tishrei is special, not because of what I do, it's because it's been established upon high that the month itself is special. I bring this specialness to every day in the month of Iyar because I, as a person, am the one that counts every single day in the month of Iyar. And by that, I give it importance. The truth is, many mitzvahs in the Torah are calendar-oriented. They have to do with the cycle of the calendar. And they fall out on a certain date on the Jewish calendar. So the 1st of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, the 10th of Tishrei is Yom Kippur, the 15th of Tishrei is Sukkot for the next 7 days, 8 days, etc., etc. So Iyar, every day of Iyar is a special day. But there's something unique, even more so, between how other Yom Tovim fall out on the day, whereas here, in the month of Iyar, the day itself is something that is significant. So he says as follows: "B'tarichim acherim ein ha-mitzvah kshura be'etzem hayom gufoi, dugmas mitzvos achilas matzah Pesach, she'inyan nifrad min hayom tesvav b'Nisan, el shechiyuv v'shal mitzvah zu chal b'yom zeh." When it comes to eating matzah on Pesach, so there's a mitzvah. Hashem wanted us to eat matzah on Pesach, but He designated, you know when you should do this mitzvah? The 15th of Nisan. But it's not that there's something inherent about matzah, that the mitzvah of matzah does something with the day. Of course, yes, there's something special about the day, and that's why we only fulfill the mitzvah by eating it on the 15th, not on the 14th, not on the 23rd of Nisan. But it's not that the mitzvah involves the day. It's just that the mitzvah coincides with that particular day. Ram Sefiras Ha'Omer hi mitzvah shel Sefiras Hayom Hazman. What are we doing by Sefira? We are counting the days. So it's the day itself is part of the mitzvah. The 15th of Nisan, the day itself is not part of the mitzvah of eating matzah. It's just that you have to eat matzah on the 15th of Nisan. In counting the Omer in the month of Iyar and also the other days, but here we're talking about a full month of it, every day is part of the mitzvah. Every day of that month is being counted and therefore used. It's in a way like almost like the object of the mitzvah. The object of the mitzvah on Pesach is the matzah. The object of the mitzvah on Sukkot is, let's say, the 4 species, the Daled Minim. The object of the mitzvah of Sefiras Ha'Omer is the day itself on which it comes out. And here, every single day of the month is an object of a mitzvah, is a part of the mitzvah. Chashivusa shel chodesh Iyar hi eifei kazu shekol yomav atzmam kshurim b'mitzvah. The day itself is part of the mitzvah. Mitzvah Sefiras Ha'Omer negas l'chol yom. Noisef al kach harei Sefiras kol yom negas gam l'chol yemei hasfira. My counting of the days impacts all the rest of the days. It's not just that the mitzvah of Sefira needs to be done so many and so many days, 49 days, 7 complete weeks, but also when I count the days are the one that impact all the rest of the days. The day that I counted today will impact the rest of the days of Sefira if I can count. Liyom makoidmin liyom mamucharim, both the days preceding it and the days following it, ad leklal achana al kabalas Torah, until we actually come to the whole idea of preparing for Matan Torah, which is the whole idea of counting of the Omer. As we know, that if a person misses one of the days of Sefira, so then it's questionable if he could still fulfill the rest of the counting. He can fulfill that mitzvah, and because of that, if a person missed a day entirely, so then they will count without a bracha, because Safek Brach Slahaka, where there's a doubt, we don't make a bracha. Because that's how we see that every day of Sefira impacts the rest. To such a degree that the Rebbe even asks a question that if everything is so interconnected, how come we make a bracha every single day? If it's all one mitzvah, then there should be one bracha for the entire Sefiras Ha'Omer. And the Rebbe essentially explains there are 49 mitzvahs, but every day is dependent upon the other day. If I'm counting that today is the 3rd day of the Omer, so then I have to have counted that yesterday is the 2nd. Or else I have not proclaimed this the 3rd day, really, because I have not yet proclaimed the 2nd day of the Omer. And you also learned about this 2 weeks ago with Eli, when he spoke about the idea that if someone crosses the international date line, and therefore they lose a day, let's say they'll go from Monday to Wednesday, they'll skip a Tuesday, their sefira will be different than everybody else. I might be counting. I counted tonight. What was it? 23, right? We counted tonight 23. But this person that lost the Tuesday will have to count tonight 22, and his tonight we counted 24. Maybe tonight we counted 24. He could be right. Anyway, whatever we counted, I counted race sphere, so it doesn't make a difference. You daven for Ahmed, you should remember also. I was with him. Imanu and Yisuf, we were together. Anyway, be that as it may, someone that crosses the international date line, the Rebbe explains, and like I said, Eli spoke about this 2 weeks ago, is his Shavuos, which is based on the counting in the Sefira, will be a day after our Shavuos. It will start on the second day of Shavuos and it will continue a day after when Shavuos ends for us. Why? Because the whole mitzvah is you need to count day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. You can't just skip and say, everybody else is counting day 5. If I didn't count day 3, I can't count day 4, day 5.
Backwards, you have to do 2 times 22 or 23.
If you go backwards, so then you have the other problem. So then again, you can't count the same day twice, because for you it's not the second day. So if you gain a day, and let's say you had 2 Tuesdays, so again, you're going to have Shavuos early if you had 2 Tuesdays.
What if you flew somewhere, missed the day, and you came back? Do you just miss the counting of one day?
So again, if you were able to make it up because you went
back and forth.
In other words, like this: you missed Tuesday this week, but you gained a Monday next week, so then you'll catch up eventually to Shavuos. Then after that Monday, you'll eventually have caught up.
Just counting the way you counted.
Huh?
You just keep counting.
Exactly. This is your own personal count. This is also derived. The Rebbe says in the pasuk. We have this in this week's Parsha. Usfartem lochem. It's a personal count. I have to count according to me, not according to what everybody else does.
Just to make the argument, right? Let's say you're on a plane and you counted today, whatever's 23.
Right.
You go on the plane and you travel however many hours, and it's 24. You land is 25. Can you count 2 times in one day if you're not planning on coming back?
No, you can't count 2 times in one day.
Even if you're in day 24, 25.
You just count whichever day you're at.
That's what you're doing. The second time zone.
Again, if you lost a day or if you gained a day, you will count totally based on whatever you counted yesterday.
So it's 25. It's a 25.
If you do the 23rd today, the next day you do the 24th.
Regardless, if everybody else over there is, let's say in Australia, doing 25 already, you will still do 24. Okay. This is going
to be 1 day later. 1 day later.
1 day. No, if you're
earlier.
As long as Simchas Torah is not late.
Unless you go back to where you were before.
Right. So that's what you said. If you lost, let's say a Tuesday on the way, one way, and then you gain 2 Mondays, so you'll have. So by the time, when you gain the 2 Mondays, you'll have caught up. Okay. The problem is, this actually happens a lot of times with people. They have, let's say, family in Australia. So they go for Pesach to Australia. If they would go in middle of Sefiras, then you're right. Whatever you lost, you'll make up. Or whatever you gain, you'll lose. I don't know exactly which direction is which. But if you went for Pesach, and so therefore you didn't go in middle of Sefiras, and whatever it is, either lost or had an extra day, I forget which direction it is, so then people have that problem. And they could avoid it. Some people actually avoid it by traveling the other way around the world. Again, don't ask me the details about this, but then you don't end up losing the day, you know. Anyway, try exactly. The Rebbe said, best not to cross the international date line during Sefira, or else you're letting yourself in for a lot of problems. Anyway, this is Shir from 2 weeks ago. Let's not go off on that. So the Rebbe says, Yisrein zeh kayim kol yemei asfira b'midah shaveh. This idea that this every day of the Sefira impacts every other day, doesn't make a difference if it's the first, the last, the middle. Every day has this value. Havi Omer yesh b'chodesh Iyar inyan sheb'chinasai shavim kol yemei hachodesh. This is the idea that they are equal all over. Now the Rebbe is going to bring in something that Kabbalah speaks about. Ba'ofen klali yeshna b'chol chodshei hashana havdelim ben tchilas hachodesh l'soifoi. Usually, the beginning of the month, the Jewish month, works by the new moon. The beginning of the month is at the time of the new moon. The middle of the new month is when the moon is full, and the end of the new moon is when the end of the month is when the moon disappears. So what do you have, really? You have the beginning of the month, you're going upwards. You're going from small to big, which shows on something positive. The end of the month, the second half of the month, shows going down, indicates something negative. The Rebbe is going to mention later, and because of that, there is a custom that some people only get married during the first 2 weeks of the Jewish month, not the last 2 weeks, when it's still going up. Lepoil, the Rebbe says, we're not chosh for it. The Rebbe always said, get married, whenever, beginning, the end of the month. But it is brought down such a type of concept because of that positive energy that's to be found with the moon getting fuller in the first half of the month. But Pardes Namar, in a Kabbalah Sefer, it says, Ki Yud Beis Chodshei Hashanim, Ki Neged Yud Beis Sirufi Ha'oisish Hashem Havaya. The name of Hashem, the ineffable name of Hashem, called by the letters Yud Kei Vav Kei, these can have different combinations. It's called tzirufim. Tzirufim means, according to Kabbalah, you take different letters of a certain word, and you could make different combinations of those letters. And you could have the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, you could have it, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the way it's written out, in 1 month of the year. Then you can have another month of the year where it will say, Hey, Yud Vav Hey. That will be the spiritual illumination that will shine then. And then another month of the year it will be Vav Hey, Yud Kei, etc. That's a Kabbalah thing. I'm not going to get into it right now. It shows on different levels of divine revelation. B'Shem Havaya, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yeshlam Arba Oisius, there are 4 letters. So not only throughout the year there are different combinations of these letters, V'af b'chol chodesh yeshnam arba shavuos. The letters Yud Kei Vav Kei correspond to the 4 weeks that's to be found in every month. What about, but really, a lunar month is more than that. It's like between 29 and 30 days. So the Rebbe says, Vayamim anisafim tfeilim la'arba'as shavuos, they're considered like extensions of those 4 weeks. So therefore, what does that tell us? The first 2 weeks correspond to the first 2 letters of Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the last 2 weeks have to do with the final letters. And we know that in general, the first letter of anything is the most powerful thing. And in Hashem's name, the first 2 letters itself is already a godly name. Yud Kei is already a godly name. And that has much more impact and strength and divine energy than the last 2 letters. Again, they correspond to the beginning of the month. The first 2 weeks are Yud Kei, the last 2 weeks are Vav Kei. Moving Eifoi, Shekeshem, Shebeshem Havai, Yesh Maila, Lois Achas L'Gaba Shniyam, Oba-Eifin Klali, Loisis, Yud Kei, L'Gaba Oisis, Vav Kei. Let's skip the brackets to the top of the next page. Kach Yesh Gam Yisrin L'Shavua Echad L'Gabe Hasheni, Oba-Eifin Klali, this is, I was speaking about the moon, but here the Rebbe speaks because of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the first 2 weeks of the month,
Why is it K? It's Hey?
because we don't say Hashem's name, we don't want to say it out. Zekmo she'anachnu omrim Hashem, or Keil, or Elokim, v'lo omrim, the way it's pronounced.
Where's K?
Yeah. ובאופן כללי, ניילם השבועיים הראשונים על פי האחרים. משום הבדל האמור, קיים הבדל גם לגבי נישואים וכולו, בין מחצס הראשונה של החודש ובין מחצס השנייה, what we said before, that there's a preference to make marriages only in the first 2 halves of the month over the latter halves. בחודש Iyar, shavim kol yemei hachodesh b'yachas le'inyan ha'amor shel avodas ha'adam. What he's pointing out over here is, even though we know that the beginning of the month to the end of the month, there are different levels, but if you're talking about my work, my spiritual avodah that I'm supposed to do every day of the month, there's a certain common denominator that the entire month has. Dalet. A person is always experiencing change. Sometimes it's good change. Sometimes he's experiencing growth. But in general, not every day is the same. And there's an advantage to that, especially if it's a matter of growth. But there's also an advantage to be consistent. Consistency is also an advantage. Not to have all these ups and downs and highs and lows, but to be consistently committed and focused on something. So the Rebbe says, the month of Iyar indicates this consistency. Every single day of the month, we have the Mitzvah of Sefiras Ha'Omer. How do we hold on to this consistency? How do we make sure to have this type of idea of being committed in such a way that no matter the changes, no matter the differences between the first week and the last week, I'm still going to be consistent? So the Rebbe says, we have this hinted actually in the name of the month. Iyar, Roshei Teivos, Avraham, Yitzchok Yaakov Rochel, Shem Arba Ragle Merkavah, Remez Hamuva Gam Beniglos Shel Torah Lahalocha. In Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's brought down that Avraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, the three forefathers, and Rochel, they correspond to what's called the four parts, the four legs, if you will, of the divine chariot of Hashem. What is that about? So he says, Iyar shel Merkavah u'kefia Amor betanyim shekol evareim kulam hayu kedoshim u'muvdalim mi'inyanei olam hazeh. What does it mean when we say, the Alter Rebbe and Tanya explains that the Avos were a Merkavah. The Avos were a divine chariot. We're holding on the next page, the middle of Dalet. What does it mean that the Avos were like a divine chariot? Merkavah, to use our language, is called a vehicle. What's the idea of a vehicle? What's the purpose of a vehicle? A vehicle has no mind of its own, unless it's a Tesla, a self-driving car, whatever. But in general, a vehicle has no mind of its own. It has no desires of its own. It is there as an instrument of the driver. The Avos were so devoted to Hashem that they saw themselves completely as a Merkavah, as an instrument, a channel for bringing down Hashem's will down here. Kasher ein klal adam davar mishaloi shekein gam bein yon avagash v'mechol drochecha shoyrer do'eyu v'masor lagamar lelekuz. When a person, even in their material things, they are manifesting and feeling what it says in the pasuk, in all your ways you should know him. What does that mean? I'm doing seemingly my own thing. I'm eating, drinking, working, whatever, sleeping, but I appreciate that this is something that's part of Hashem's mission in this world. I am a channel for Hashem's mission in this world. So then, kidugmas hamarkava shekol mehuso bitzur retzayin haroichev. What's the entire, like we said before, what's the entire idea of a Merkavah? That it has no independent will. This is how a person can be consistent. Like we said before, that a consistent commitment comes when I remove my ego from the picture. When I realize that I am here for a purpose, for a mission, so I am bent on fulfilling that mission. Regardless of the different changes of the month, the first week, the last week, the middle week, it doesn't make a difference. Gesher bein chodesh Nisan b'tziachas Amor Mitzrayim al menas shetavdin esalakim al harazeh. What is the month of Iyar is a bridge between the month of Nisan, that the main theme of Nisan is Pesach, when we were taken out of Mitzrayim to serve Hashem. Tavdun meloshon avodas eved. What does it mean you shall serve? like a servant serves. A servant feels that their entire being is about what they need to do. I remember reading or seeing about this once. I mentioned this a long time ago, that people loved and did whatever they could to be able to be in the royal palace in England, and in the days of the Queen, to serve the Queen. And even if it meant that they had horrible hours, they would sleep in these little bunk beds, crowded little rooms, whatever, because they wanted to devote their lives to being able to be in that particular position. The same thing, every Yid has that in their potential. And that becomes now a bridge. The month of Iyar, Lebein HaChodesh HaShlishi, to the third month. Because if Nisan is the first month, so then Iyar is the second, and Sivan is the third month, which the Chazal say, Yarchet Lisoy Sivan. Sivan is the third month, by Nitnu Orient Lisoy. It was given the three-part Torah. Torah is made up of Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. La'amt Lisoy, to a nation that's made up of three parts, Koyanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. So therefore, the bridge is this devotion, this commitment, this consistency that we have in the month of Iyar, to constantly make every day part of the mitzvah of Sefira that takes us from Mitzrayim to Matan Torah. That's the end of the Sikha, and now we're going to go into a letter of the Rebbe. This is completely somewhere else, and just the Sikha was so short, so I figured we could add this letter. I know. So it's very interesting. This letter, I think, is the back of Chelik Beis Likutei Sichos, and over there's actually two letters with the same theme. But I decided to pick this letter, and maybe we'll fill in from some of the concepts that's in the previous letter over there. The Rebbe talks about something very interesting. At the beginning of our Parsha, we speak about, I want to just find that letter again, if I can see it where it's in my files, where I downloaded it from. It should be over here somewhere. Let's see. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to spend too much time. Here it is. Is it here? Okay. So the Rebbe talks about, at the beginning of this Parsha, there's something very interesting. It says, Emor el HaKoyanim, speak, say to the Koyanim, V'yamart al b'nei Aaron, and tell the children of Aaron, do not getting any contacts with impurity of a dead body and so on. So all the Mefarshim ask about this, and Rashi speaks about it. It's repetitive. It says, Emor el HaKoyanim v'amart aleim. Why does it say twice Emor? So it comes to teach us that you should both teach the Kohanim themselves, and they also, or there's an obligation also to teach the Ketanim, those that are young, those that do not know the halachas, they have to be taught also. There are two other places in the Torah where there's a similar thing, where it doesn't say Emor v'amarta, but it says different types of psukim that comes to tell us that the adults have to teach the young. One is by the laws of blood, the Isser of eating blood. The adults have to make sure not to feed the young blood, even though we'll soon talk about blood. And the same thing about the idea of eating non-kosher insects, shrotzim or masim. And the Gemara speaks about it. Why does there have to be three different psukim? Why can't we just have it in one pasuk, and from that we'll be able to learn it out? He says every pasuk is different, and you can't really learn it out. This one has this specialness, and this one has that specialness. So therefore, you need to write it in all three places. But the Rebbe wants to find out the inner meaning. Why does it have to say it in all three places? So here is what the Rebbe is going to address in this letter from 1944. Shalom Abracha. V'amarti mikvar sheyesh loymar shezeu haremez bedroshes razal brought on Gemara Yevamis Kuf Yudal Damad Aleph. Asher gimel pamim nemar achiv de lahazir g'doylom al aktanim. 3 times in the Torah do we find that the adults are obligated to teach the ones that are young. Shkotzim, by disgusting types of creatures, meaning insects and stuff like that, by the prohibition of eating dam, blood, and tumah, by matters having to do with impurities that the Kohenim have to make sure that they don't come in contact with things that are impure. Now, a katan, a child, doesn't always have to mean someone, like the Rebbe says, that on the driver's license it says that they are young. But sometimes the person could be 70, 80 years old, but because of their knowledge, they're like a child. And someone could be like 15 years old or 20 years old, and with knowledge, they could be like an adult. So mainly it's about a teacher, an educator, and their students. And in these 3 situations, we're telling the educator, you need to deal with your student even in such 3 types of scenarios. When it comes to the one that's being educated, and he's considered a minor, maybe not in years, in regards to the person that's teaching him. There are different reasons why we say, you know what, it's not worth getting into this. I'm not going to teach this. Let's skip this and go on to a different topic, because they're not going to want to accept it. They're not going to want to listen. Aleph, one situation is Oimrim sha'amatzav ato befrat b'mokim ploini ukazeh sheteva anoshim gas v'chumri b'yoyser u'moyser ha'adam min ha'behema oyin ve'eich yikanes ba'oznam inyan shal Torah v'yirashamayim v'chulu. A person looks around, they go out to some town, and they see these people are completely corrupt. These people are completely devoid of any type of spiritual sensitivity. How can I begin speaking to them about spirituality and so on when they don't have any type of sensitivity for this? So, the Rebbe says, the Torah teaches you this even by someone that's so insensitive that he's eating insects, that a normal human being would find insects disgusting, and yet, maybe not in France, they have like, what, chocolate-covered frogs, or what is it? No.
Frogs and
snails.
In China, India, yeah.
Snails. So, Valzeh ba'at zivui, sha'afilo ha'echel shkatzim, shezeh moire she'ena begeder enushi klal. Someone that's eating insects. He says he's not even human. Forget about Jewish and sensitive. Kari shkatzim nafshel adam katzim, a person is disgusted by it. The adults in knowledge and mind have the obligation to even teach someone that is so far gone that they're eating insects. I'm sorry, it's in the capability. Since the Torah told us to teach this, so it's within our capability to teach such a thing as well. That's one category. Beis, a second category. When do we say that it will pay off? Everybody, when they do an activity, they want to see how it's going to pay off. You don't want to do something and feel like you're throwing a rock down a hole and there's nothing beneficial from it. So he says, you know when something can have a payoff from it, when I'm dealing with telling a person about things that he's not accustomed to do the whole time. If a person is already so deeply ingrained to do something, why should I even bother telling him not to? He's going to listen to me. Am I going to get any results from telling this person to stop doing something that he's used to from doing the whole time? So he says, Negating that view, mevu'eres ba'azharos gedolim al aktanim be'inyan hadam, concerning blood. Shamar azal laposik rachazak lebilti achoil hadam. It says, a very interesting expression in the pasuk. It says, chazak lebilti achoil hadam. Strengthen yourself. Hold fast, hold strong, and don't eat blood. Why is it Torah? It doesn't say it's by other things. It doesn't say, strengthen yourselves and don't eat non-kosher animals. Strengthen yourselves and don't wear shatnez. All of a sudden, by blood, it says, chazak lebilti echol adam. Go, really dig deep and get a lot of energy to counter that. Why was it necessary to have this special thing, chazak? Blood was a very common drink. Their morning Joe was the morning blood. This was what the Yidden, I guess, of Mitzrayim had maybe picked up from the Egyptians. So,
the blood they would drink was from goats and stuff. It wasn't.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah. But that's prohibited. You're not allowed to drink blood of an animal. So you would think, I am going to talk to a person that doesn't know about the importance of not eating blood, when he's completely involved, and that's what he's been doing every day since he remembers. He's been drinking a cup of blood in the morning, and you will try to stop him. He says, I'll talk to him about other things. I'm not going to talk to him about something that he's used to. That's why the Torah tells you, by the mitzvah of blood, that's not an excuse. Don't worry. You have the power. Teach him even something that he's very used to. Even in such situations, it's necessary. So if you see someone that, like, whatever it is, Shabbos, I must have my phone on Shabbos, or whatever it is, and you think that it's like impossible to talk to him about it, don't give up. Gimel. Another excuse is, or another situation is, I will only involve myself in teaching something that could be explained logically. Many parts of the Torah are very logical, makes a lot of sense. Those parts of the Torah I will impart to others. Those parts of the Torah I will try to teach to someone that knows less than me. Something that demands complete suspension of one's intellect, of complete faith. And the other one says, I'm not a believer. What are you telling me things that have to do with belief if I'm not a believer? There isn't even an opening. You can't even start having a conversation with the person. When it comes to the laws of purity and impurity, the Rambam explains, these are suprarational things. These are things that make no sense in intellect. The Rambam writes, this is specifically a decree of Hashem. It's not meant to be understood logically and rationally. They are part of the laws that are called suprarational laws. Still in all, in our Parsha, it tells us, teach those that are of lesser knowledge about the laws of impurity. Don't let this stop you. Because it is suprarational, don't let it stop you from teaching it. And then this itself will give you the power to do it. The very fact that Hashem demands it of us, that gives us the power to do it. And the truth is that I'm sure many people have seen this. I know I experienced this a lot of times, that I am approaching a person and I want to explain to him something about Yiddishkeit. And I have no idea how or what opening I'll use or in which way. I have this a lot of times when I'm answering emails. and all of a sudden I start, and just Hashem just puts the words in my mouth, or puts my fingers to the right keyboard parts. Because as much as we think we cannot do it, if we realize that we are really a vehicle for Hashem's will, so then Hashem works through us. So that's V'eich yoel chinuch binyanim ke'elu yesh lahazbra p'mashkas v'arambam bilchus gerishin seif perik beis. The Rebbe says that we know every single Jew at heart, whether he's aware of it or not, wants to do the will of Hashem, the Rambam says, and therefore, regardless if there's a logical way for me to explain it, or regardless if that person is so entirely immersed in this thing, or regardless if this is something that is disgusting that he's involved in, every Yid wants to do what's right, whether he's conscious of it or not, and therefore we cannot free ourselves of the obligation to try to trigger and light that spark in every Yid. Then the Rebbe concludes with a bracha, l'alter l'tshuva, l'alter l'gula, which the previous Rebbe would say very often at that time.